Hey everybody, I'm here today to show you myself installing an IKEA shelf. It's actually a really simple process, and in this video I will be demonstrating the installation process of the shelf. Now I start off by measuring some distances and making some markings. Now the shelf that I will be installing is basically the same as that bottom shelf. It is exactly the same as that bottom shelf, but I'm installing it a new one a little bit higher. So the first step is to make your markings. Now what I did is I made a marking for the bottom of the shelf. Now I'm making a marking for the right side of the shelf, and then I'm going to make a marking for the left side of the shelf. Now it actually takes pretty much longer to make the markings than it actually does to install the shelf, but making the markings is actually more important because installing the shelf is really easy. But making the shelf nice and level and flush and look perfect is a little bit harder, and that's what these markings are for. So I basically made 3 lines on the wall. I drew 3 lines on the wall, one for the bottom of the shelf, one for the right-hand side of the shelf, and one for the left-hand side of the shelf. Now I'm going to take the shelf and I'm just going to position it within those lines, and those are just guidelines right there. Now, the next thing that I do is I actually grab a level and I make sure that the shelf is level. And you'll notice that there are actually 2 holes in the shelf. There's a bigger version of this shelf with more than 2 holes, but this one only has 2 holes. So I now just tap it to make sure that it's level and get it perfectly level. And then I hold it into position, pressing really hard against the wall, and I take a pencil and I just draw little dots. I twist that pencil inside of those 2 holes, and that allows me to have the markings for where I need to place the wall anchors, and the wall anchors will be used to hold that shelf against the drywall. Now, the next thing that I do is I erase those old marking lines, the ones on the right, the bottom, and the left, just because when you put the shelf in place, it's actually harder to erase those lines after because there's not as much room to work with. So now that I have those 2 holes, and you can see them on the wall, the next thing that I have to do is basically take my drill and drill some holes for the wall anchors. Now, I just placed the shelf in place just to make sure that those holes are in the perfectly correct spots. Now, it takes an extra few seconds to just place the shelf against the wall to double check, but it will save you from making holes that you don't need, because if you made an error in the markings, then you make a hole in the wall and you're gonna have to patch that up. And I just take the level to make sure that from the bottom shelf to the top shelf it's level. So now I have my drill and I have the appropriate drill bit, and I'm just drilling holes inside of the wall to make sure that the wall anchors can be placed in place. So this is just a very simple step. And if you're drilling into wood, if you're going to be putting the screws into wood, then you won't need wall anchors. But because I wasn't screwing into any studs, I need these wall anchors. So now I'm just off to the side grabbing 2 drywall anchors, and I'm just going to see if I can hammer them in place or if I need to make the holes a little bit bigger. And you'll notice that I need to make this hole a little bit bigger. So I just kind of just use the drill bit and just make it a tad bit bigger and easier to get the drywall anchor into place. And then I press the drywall anchor into place. I tap it in with the hammer until it's nice and pretty much flush with the drywall. And then I do the same thing with the other drywall anchor. And as you can see, I don't need to use the drill to make the hole a little bit bigger for the left one. Now that the wall anchors are in place, the last part of the process is actually very, very simple. I basically take the shelf, I put it in place over the wall anchors, and then I use the screws to secure it against the wall. It's actually a really simple process. I'm just changing up the drill bit right now so that I can place a Phillips head drill bit onto the drill so that I can use the drill to get the screws in place. So I place 2 screws on the bottom shelf. I lift up the shelf that I will be installing, and then I always start off by using my finger to hand tighten the screws into place, just to make sure that they go nice and smoothly into the wall anchor, and then I use the drill to tighten them a little bit more. So I have the right one in place. Now I'm going to work on the left one, and that's basically it. I just finger tighten it at first. I get the drill, I tighten it up with the drill, and then what I like to do is I like to just go over both of the screws and just tighten them up really nice and snug with the drill. Overall, it's actually a really simple process, and although there are only 2 screws, if you want to do it right, you have to spend more time measuring and making those markings with a pencil than actually getting the shelf into place, because it's actually more important to get everything nice and level. And that's basically it. That's a picture of the finished product. It was a very simple process, and I really, really hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you like it, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.